All right. Third time's a charm. How it going there, Richard? Is
Yeah,
that better?
and we have a lot better connection too.
Much better connection. I was going to say straight away. Something was glitching out on my Zoom. I should have done that yesterday when I was having problems with it.
Uh-huh. So, so you're staying. Both you and your wife have been involved with the Aborigines for a while now, haven't you?
Yeah, so I grew up in a place called Maroubra, in Sydney, and I spent a lot of time in a area called Namamandjira, which is in Little Bay. So it's like where Botany Bay pretty much comes into. As you fly into Sydney, you fly straight over the top of it. Really, it used to be a low income area with a lot of housing, what you call housing projects in the US, low income area. Now it's, of course, property prices, everything else. It's a little very different. Um, but yeah, that's kind of, I grew up so playing football, or rugby league and rugby union here we call. Many of my friends I went to school with, and people most of my life, friends have been Aboriginal. So growing up in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, it's pretty. Most of my friends are Aboriginal, and then my wife grew up in an interesting area in northern New South Wales, beautiful area called Bellinger Valley, and this is the Gumbaynggirr people's area. So there's their land. And so she knew a lot about that from her childhood, whereas we didn't learn much at my schooling. It was very colonial-based history of the Aboriginals, not necessarily, you didn't really know much about what was going on. That's changed a lot in the 30 odd years now since I was, now my kids learn about Aboriginal culture at school, and really interesting. So my wife had learned quite a lot being in this area, and growing up on a farm with strong connections she went to Stein. My kids go to Steiner School, Rudolph Steiner Schools, and they absolutely love it. I think it's a great schooling system, and she had a similar one. So they learned a lot about Australian Aboriginal culture, and then she actually went and studied, and she studied anthropology at University in Sydney, and specialising in, I'm going to kill this, but I think I should know. She's studying, I can't remember what specialty she was looking at, but Northern Aboriginal tribes, certain custodial rituals. I'll say that is the best way I'm going to say it, Richard, without but you have to ask her. But so she has quite an involved background. And then from my more of my spirit work, I guess, and my energy work and that type of stuff, that's been my inroads again back into Australian Aboriginal elders. I'm considered to be, in their eyes, I'm considered to be Indigenous, and everywhere I travel around the planet, every group brings me in as one of theirs. So I have this innate ability to find myself always being part of First Nations groups around the planet, without any hurdles or barriers. And so I'm one of only a few people that can go to very sacred, that are allowed to go there. People go in these areas have no idea, but into a lot of Australian Aboriginal male, very sacred male sites. So yeah, not many white fellas get to go. There's one or two of these places. No white fellas have ever been there. So very, very honoured to be part of that type of thing. I'm trying my best to, from a practical and pragmatic point of view, I'm actually trying my best to bring economic stimulation packages to Indigenous groups across the planet, and give them back their sovereign rights as best as we can through financial stimulation packages. And so we're looking at lots of different educational-based programs at the moment, and social impact programs. So it's found myself in this position, and the elders, the ones that are really switched on, like there's an elder here, Uncle Lewis, who represents 13 tribes in Australia. He's an amazing guy. I'll definitely hook you up with Uncle Lewis. Man, a few words, but like so much power behind them that he doesn't have to say much to really move mountains, and incredible, absolutely incredible guy. And when I met Uncle Lewis, it was on sacred land on his birthday, actually. And he was, of all the masters and all the teachers I've met, he's up there, top few that I just can pierce through to your mind and really have that capacity to in 3 words, 1,000 words have been disseminated to you in such a way that you're like, whoa. And I sat there for hours. It was the coolest experience. He's a great guy. And he could tell straight away, because when people like myself and certain people, when you can see they're switched on, they're switched on. You know the deal, Richard. You know, you can tell when someone's got that they're on the right vibe. You know, they're tuned into the right frequency, and they're trying to do things for the positive. And he could tell who I was without me having to say anything or do anything, you know, straight away. And that's kind of what happens everywhere I travel. So that's kind of my now. Like my kids are very like I can hear the song lines or the dreaming stories and stuff. Same as the land, like I can speak to the land and stuff, being a plant guy. That's kind of part and parcel. So it's really about maintaining and preserving some of the knowledge that's going to be lost, because a lot of younger Aboriginals couldn't really give a crap about anything to do with that type of stuff anymore. It's not like there's not too many people that want to know about Australian Aboriginal medicinal plants and how best to sustainably source them and increase and ensure that cultural heritage gets. And so they're open to working with, and that's I find with lots of Indigenous groups, especially the ones that are really switched on wherever they are on the planet. They know that they need to integrate outside of their own cultural base and their socio-demographic there, because it's the only way that they're going to survive. And it's important if it's done the right way, it preserves the culture without diluting it, and it's respected the same way. But if it's done the wrong way, then it becomes like, you know, unfortunately what's happened in the US with a lot of Indigenous American Indians there. And then here in Australia's a terrible record of how just, you know, literally you couldn't vote if you were Aboriginal up to into the 70s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and just, you know, just the fact that we were just stealing kids for generations and stuff, and then putting them into, you know, and pretty much just whitewashing them in the way that the Australian government did it. A lot to be said, and still now, like I just read yesterday, like another group got off. Only one group's ever been fined, a mining group, for destroying heritage sites in Australia. That was Rio Tinto recently, and it made a big international furore. That happens literally every week or every day. An Aboriginal sacred site is getting destroyed. You don't hear about, and the government doesn't do anything about it.
Oh, wow.
That was the only case ever where, and I mean, literally with the uranium mines that they put in, it's one of the most sacred spots up in Jabiluka. That area is one of the most pristine places on the planet, and it's, you know, now it's a nuclear waste area. That was incredibly sacred land, and they literally just blew up rock cave art that was 100 odd thousand years old. Didn't care.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is how it's the colonial history of, and the way that they enslaved the Aboriginal people, because they didn't do it to the Maori. They couldn't do it to the Maori. And the reason was the Maori were a bit more structured. They had designated someone as a sovereign leader, a queen. They fucked her over as well. The story of her is very interesting. But they, for a while there, it seemed like, and actually it's very unconstitutional what happened in New Zealand, because they rewrote the constitution and pretty much put her into a house in prison. Like she was pretty much confined to a house. But the fact that she was a delegate at the 1893 international international symposium for like world leaders, they weren't considered to be the, you know, the pygmy people, or the, you know, like the lesser humans as they were looked at, and everything else. The Tasmanian Aboriginals, they wiped out completely, every one of them. Like that is the most effective genocide of modern history we know of, where you can actually say literally an entire civilization, entire people of unbroken knowledge of over 100,000 years. There is no missing like link there. That's just gone. We killed it. And the last one we then took around England and the UK until she died of communicable diseases, and was showcased as the last Aboriginal, Tasmanian Aboriginal. And yeah, it's that's a very good story. There's a documentary, and that's very, very well done. And so now we face this situation where they're still fighting for sovereign rights and for land rights and land treaty. And now it can be done because we have the technologies that one could give them viable and sustainable financial development packages and educational packages, which is major requirement for any of these First Nations people to be sustainable into the future, unless you're going to do it like the Sentinelese and just leave them alone. on an island somewhere. You know what I mean? And then that's
Right.
it. You know,
Yeah.
which is not possible anymore. We're 200 years past that point in Australia. So we have to look at integrative approaches, and it's not about, we can't fix what's been done, and they're not. It's a different generation, you know. Now, like, no one in Australia would be like, yeah, let's kill everybody in this race or this thing. It's one of the most multicultural places on the planet to live. In my class at school, literally 20, 30 kids, there wouldn't be more than two that were Anglo-Saxon, third generation white Australians. It's rare. All my friends are Chinese. They immigrated. My grandparents immigrated here in the 50s after World War II. A lot of immigration then. So everyone's from everywhere. Asian, African. I live near Coffs Harbour currently, and it's the largest population of Sudanese outside of Sudan live in my town. So, you know, you have these great mixed bags. It means awesome food, Richard, everywhere you go. You can get some of the best cuisine from around the world in Australia, man. Because there's people from everywhere here. Like, I got some of the best Japanese, some of the best Ethiopian, and some of just it gives. And I think that's why Australians are well tolerated when traveling as well, because we're used to, you know what I mean? Like, man, I used to go to the Mardi Gras. That was happening back when I was 15, 14 at school. It's totally standard thing. No one cared if you were gay. That was in mid-90s in Australia. No one really cared. It was way beyond that then. No one give a shit. And so it's always funny when I travel to other places around the planet and see how backwards things are, whether it's, you know, bigotry or, like, I got a Hungarian background. So when I go travel to Hungary and you go to countryside, I go to friends' places, and a very old school relationships between, you know, like my grandmother, my grandfather, they knew what they did. You know, my grandmother did these things, my grandfather did these things, and that was how they worked. And it's, you know, a really old school kind of way of, you know, now today people are like, oh, well, that's unprogressive, da da da. But it worked. It worked really, really well, because it's kind of like, we do it nowadays with business structure. I get asked to come into companies, and I'm like, just call everyone. They're like, well, this person should be this CEO, or should this person be the COO? And I'm like, just call them all managing directors, make it a think tank. Everyone knows what their job is. The guy that's been in finance for 30 years, if he can't figure out that he's technically the CFO, I think we're going to have more of a problem than we need to worry about. And it's like the caste system in India. A lot of people don't understand it, really don't understand how that worked. It worked very, very well. It wasn't a slavery-based system at all. It was nothing like that. And then when the English came in, they couldn't understand it. They brought in police. They didn't do anything. They had no crimes. They didn't know how to. They were self-regulating, like any good society or civilization since ancient Vedic days. And that's what the Aborigines were in Australia. They were self-regulating. They had tribes. They knew they were very. You're talking an expanse of land that's way too big to even bother trying to bring everyone under one thing, because it'd take you a year literally to walk from one side to the other to tell someone about it. So you're not having these. It's not like New Zealand. New Zealand literally, it's a lot smaller than Australia is. So you could think mainland Australia, the Tasmanian Aborigines, that was their problem. They were connected. It did take you a day, or you could walk literally in a week, a couple of weeks from north to south, you know. And so they were much more integrated, which made it a lot more different. And they did not want the English there at all. Straight away, they were very aggressive. But as you have to be, you know, I'm sure they've been attacked by mainland Australian Aboriginal tribes in 100,000 years of being there. So we started to look at, I started to look at the different trends around why was it so easy for them to do what they did. And the biggest issue for them was, well, they were smart people. This is a climate-driven, food-based infrastructure, like agricultural, from an ag space. You have to travel a lot to get the amount of nutrition that you need in this country, and from very diverse areas. So it does not make sense to make permanent dwellings. You go seasonally from place to place. It'd be a stupid idea to sit in one place. There were a few places like that where they did have permanent dwellings, just because they were major fishing areas, or they had a major source of protein or some type of nutrition there that was easily accessible, which isn't too many places. The rainforest where I live, people think it must be the most lush place on the planet. It'll kill you faster than anything else if you don't know what you're eating. And it's not easy to get up to a canopy, which is 100 meters above you. You're picking around with every other animal down the bottom there, unless you learn how to climb those trees and pick those vines and know which things, and the processes as well that they went through to consume some of the foods are incredibly labor intensive. Like, I mean, a week of processing to make a floury cake that tastes like nothing type thing. Like they weren't doing it because it was, hey, let's do something with our spare time. It was like, this is the only source of food we have at this time of year, so we're going to eat cycads. We have to use the nut. This is the only process we know to make it safe to eat. They were very, very effective at land management. Their land management was exceptional, and they knew that. They knew they couldn't come in and do. If you tried to do the European, great example now, 200 years later, European agriculture completely destroyed the soil in this country, completely decimated the water systems, and their methodologies worked. They were able to sustain, grow, but that was the downfall, because the Europeans came in and said, you don't have permanent settlement and you don't have an educational system in place. That's, as far as they're concerned, you're a savage, whatever it was those days. And they had to use the Aborigines. They didn't know what to eat. They didn't know what to do down here. Yeah, they brought their sheep with them and some cows, but they had no idea how to sustain a population here in this far off land. But they didn't in a lot of places, and required the native people to help them out. So a lot of the great explorers, Australian explorers, did it with the help of three of the most famous ones. Half the deserts named after were saved by a group of Aborigines. Saved their asses twice. They no way would have made it through their journey. So it's interesting to be part now of the process of solving those problems, because I look at myself as a problem solver. So I look at this as, okay, how do we get the most impact out of what technologies we already have, the best services, the best people, whatever's available to us right now, what is the tools that we have in our tool belt, and how best can we integrate this? Because we don't need to talk about the past anymore. It's been done. And we don't need to talk about how badly the government still doesn't treat this. That's been done. We need business to come in, and we need corporations to come in. And that's where I'm focused most of my energy on, is trying to work with the people that can actually impact the decisions. People think governments make decisions. They don't. Big business makes the decisions. The government will do whatever they tell them to do, and we'll get told what to do. So, and this happens. I do a lot of work internationally, and people are like, oh, you're gonna have this there. There's gonna be corruption there. It's everywhere. Like, how do you solve corruption? Easy. Pay off the corrupt guys. Literally, people ask me, how are you doing it? How are you going to do it in Africa? And I said, super easy. I'm doing it in Lesotho right now. You pay the government officials, give them a severance package, get them hell out of the country, replace them with ethical people that the people actually want to be there, bring in a transparent financial structure. And that's more your brother's area of expertise there. But bring that put them into a position where it's an accessible formula that you can then replicate somewhere else. So Lesotho is small, still got a lot of problems. It's not easy. I got to annex it from South Africa and kind of British control still, and there's a lot of debt and a lot of very bad relations between the Chinese and what happened there with opening infrastructural doors, and they opened diplomatic doors, and it went really unfavorably for the average Lesothoan person. Lost a shitload of money the day that happened, because they stopped being able to access the travel visas, work visas that you could almost get at the airport in Lesotho at the time, or in Johannesburg at the time, to go work in the UK as a foreign national for like 3 months, 6 months, like seasonal working visas pretty much, which were a major stimulation, as you could imagine, economic point. And then what's happened is, Chinese interests has come in, they promise certain infrastructure. They use that to get those citizenship routes to utilize them. So they started sending Chinese citizens through. Turned out to be something to do with high-level money laundering and all the rest of the stuff that happens there. And I won't get into that area, but that really did, for the average Lesotho person, they really just don't in general in commercial interests from China anymore. And so there's a way to solve this problem. Like, there's a 100% way, because they have infrastructure that can be used there. They need someone else to manage it, though. They know they can't be successful in Lesotho. So going to the Chinese and saying, look, on behalf of you, we can go and we can manage this and do it the right way with it out seeming like you have interest in it. They don't mind. They just want to make money at the end of the day. So they don't care. The government officials, they just want to make money. And the people, happy to accept the help. So you start to have a winning formulation, and that's then how do you integrate it and impact it? That's the starting formula, and then the hard work starts. And I've been 2 years in Lesotho now, putting the project together there, and it relies on farmers. It relies on bringing together farming groups and tribal leaders so that you control the land and agriculture. you're controlling the food supply pretty much. And we do not respect farmers enough. Like internationally, people go to the supermarket, they open the fridge, they have no idea the hard efforts that the farmers put in to grow that grain of rice or that head of lettuce or whatever it is that that sauce that got made from a chili that some guy grew in, Bolivia. So yeah, it's really, really interesting to be able to look at the geopolitical factors and be able to integrate some of these techs into the solutions that are there. And that's what I've been working on with the Choice project that I'm doing at the moment out of Brazil. It's an international project, but it's to showcase these technologies and these right now available to humanity solutions to the problems we face are there. They're not 50 years from now. They're not beyond 2030. They're not right now. We have solutions we do not utilize, like pyrolysis, to clean up the planet right now. We can turn all the waste that we have on this planet. If you set up the right type of waste to energy management systems globally, I could literally run out of plastics and run out of waste in the next 8 years. You won't have enough feedstock for me. I'm going to have to go into construction waste, and I'm going to have to go into nuclear waste, and I'm going to go into sewage, which we can do, every one of them. It's that technology's been around. Pyrolysis has been around since World War II. It is not new technology. We've been using, there are operational units that are converting metric tons of garbage a day into biopellets, graphene, syngases that we use in other commercial aspects. And they've been around for like 20, 30 years. I was blown away. I only was introduced to the technology 2 years ago. And I was like, what? This is literally getting used now and no one knows about it. Like, kids should know about this at school. That's, as well and good as it is to learn about history, let's learn about what right now we can do to write, like you're writing history right now. Don't worry about what happened yesterday. We need to focus on today, because if this isn't a concerted effort right now to save the planet and integrate whatever we can in any way, whether it's a fintech, a green tech, a clean tech, whether it's burning coal, like I got a group right now, they can take your coal, spray it with an enzyme, 90% less emissions, and it produces 2 to 3 times more energy, and it's super cost effective. That is a solution. It's not getting rid of coal altogether, but that is something that coal groups and big companies will look at and do something with. It's no good going there and going, fuck, we've got the next hydrogen or this, we've got the next generation energy device and we're getting rid of all petroleum, because that's not going to happen. That industry will just blockade you like it's done with every other group. You have to integrate and work with them. So if I go to a group like, I work with a number of different car manufacturers at the moment who are integrating bioplastics. People say to me, man, you work with plastics companies, chemical, I work with mining, gas companies, because I got to integrate the technologies into those spaces, but I have to do it in a functional fashion, like any solution that isn't too challenging. So for me, go to Toyota and say, you know what, I can actually replace 20 to 25% of your liquid molded plastics with a bioplastic you could just chuck into your existing equipment. They're like, okay, cool. We have to do that anyway. We've already promised the shareholders and the EPA we're going to do it. So that's fucking great for us. We don't have to retool, do anything. They integrate it. Guess what? Next year I got them to 76% based bioplastic. And then it's going to be 100%. And it's that crawl, walk, run approach that, well, I don't get involved in a lot of active stuff. I said to friends years ago, I'm like, the reason I don't get involved in your grassroots stuff is I'm going to get to the very, very, very top, to the most powerful people, and I'm going to integrate myself, and then I'm going to efficiently bring in these technology changes. I'm not going to be the guy putting the flag up the post and saying, this is what you have to do. And because those guys just get chucked out in 2 seconds, no one takes you seriously. And you just end up being one of those side fringe people that has a great tech or had something, no one wants to go near it. Or if it's really, really good technology and you do that and you take that type of approach, you disappear. Your patent disappears, you disappear. If it's a really good technology, Department of Defense wants it, they will get it. Okay. And I work with a lot of those technologies to get them commercialized. And you have certain stipulations. So like I have a tech right now, pretty much could get rid of all. If I said to you that there's a technology right now you can plug into your phone and it could get rid of every virus and illness and disease on this planet right now, that exists. Okay, I work directly with that guy who invented this. This was designed for a similar pandemic that's going on at the moment. These are the guys that invented the gene splicing machine. They know that this is a man-made virus that we're seeing right now. They're the guys that worked on the first gene. They built the actual gene splicer, the first one. And there's only 2 on the planet. One in the Department of Defense, one in Harbin, China. They know. They built them. And so they have the solution to this. They've been called in by high-level government before to shut down these pandemics. And they can literally do it word for word. When I spoke with them the other week, I'm helping them on another project. These guys are the highest clearance that you get, the highest clearance as a civilian you can possibly get. He is someone I would love for you to interview sometime, Richard Jeffrey, if he says yes to it. He's probably one of the most interesting guys you'll ever meet. But yeah, what they've got is the ability to pretty much cure you of anything, like anything using at frequencies. I mean, these guys are doing stuff at such scale. So they said to me, Hans, just one of them. He's like, by myself, he could go across the states right now and shut down COVID and all its variants in 90 days without any non-invasively. They've done it before. People, they just don't even know. This is next level kind of technology. The implications are it's incredible. Now, how do those guys get over the line? They've tried with institutional money and with government backing. They get through the third phases and, of course, get pulled out. You are never going to get past the third phase. And you get good results all the way through, no problems at all, not a single record marker get it. They just don't give you UAE. You don't get that next level of approval, and you're back at start again. So this time, these guys want to fund it themselves, which they're going to do. I'm helping them out with. This is a cool story. Those guys also have one of the largest rubies. They have a collection of some of the largest rubies on the planet. So I'm helping them with a line of credit on those rubies to be able to fund their projects so they do not have that same problem again. But that is going to be something I'm going to Trojan horse with another group I'm working with, which has a solution to the pandemic right now and a vaccine that actually works. They're called nanocures. They're out of the US, out of Austin, Texas. They're manufacturing in India right now. These guys can manufacture a couple, probably 5. They want to do 5 to 6 billion doses. They have an effective vaccine and a immunostimulant. It's a nasal delivery technology. So this removes the need for syringes. So think about every single dose syringe drug on the planet gets removed because of this product. Now, any other time, these guys would have a hope in fucking hell of doing what they're doing. The thing is, they designed this. Well, one, Steve, who's the CEO, was George Bush's senior advisor for 2 of his terms. So it's a well-connected guy. So that's one good starting point, for if you've got a technology like that. 2, they have been developing it and got 55 patents, so they're tight as hell, like on the technology and everything else. It's a very well proven. This is using bioreactors to make vaccines. So I know too much about vaccines. Let's just put it that way. And so this is a recombinant protein vaccine. It's much like the hepatitis B vaccines are made, which are very safe, very effective, and you can scale them. That's the whole thing about them. I mean, literally, if you've got a bioreactor, which there's 25 I know of in the US that are sitting idly right now, we could make enough doses in 30. Literally, if you could switch it on tomorrow, we can make that vaccine for you in 24 hours. I can write on the back of a napkin the information, what you need. Everyone knows how to do the process. It's very common. If you have a bioreactor, you're already doing this process. It's just the purification step. That's the only thing that's like, you need to get that one piece, and then you can make this at scale. And so I've brought these guys, and my number one priority right now. So I brought them to one of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the planet. And this is because people are like, oh man, you're getting involved with vaccines. I'm like, no. See, you've got to understand. This is similar to like when polio was done and done well. Polio was a great vaccine. And you would have remembered how devastating polio was. Like, I still have Hungarian friends, that elderly have, issues because of polio when they were young, from getting polio. And that was a successful vaccine program that went across the planet, and we did a great job. Humanity did a great job on that one. Now, come Big Pharma, obviously everything becomes more segregated. It's this, different type of market. These guys at nanocures, their approach is they don't give a crap. Okay, they'll work with every one of your vaccines, however shit it is. You can add their recombinant DNA, recombinant vaccine into your vaccine, and it'll Trojan horse you across the line. And guess what? You can do it through nasal, which means self-administration of drugs. That's a big thing for me. I work in the medical development space, and the sovereign rights of people's health, and their ability to do what they should have the right to do. I'm a big advocate for euthanasia, very big advocate. Anyone who's worked in palliative care, and so very close to me, as I've helped a number of friends and family of mine, and it's just to have to get to go through that process, where your sovereign rights as an individual, you don't have the choice to determine what you want to do with your body, is ridiculous. That is absolute. It's like saying that you need to think this way, and we think that we denigrate anyone that's a despot leader anywhere on the planet, or any group that's under tight rule by a despot leader or a right wing. I won't mention any countries, but we can all think of a different, like a Latin American country right now where you have some fucking idiot running it, and everyone's just going, well, what's happening here? This is where Steve and the way those guys are taking the approach is, okay, look, we're going to work with everybody. We're going to do this fast because we just want to make sure this happens. Like, we all know it's going to be super successful. It'll make a lot of money. No one cares. I said to Steve, I'm like, I'm going to open up every door I can for you, Steve, and we'll get this over the line fast. There'll be a press release mid next week about this. And this is the solution the world needs right now. This will also give us the ability to do real-time diagnostics at home. So you'll be at home, you can take a test. These vaccines are so fucking stable. They're shelf stable. They get room temperatures. So you can post these things everywhere. So however quick your postal system is in your country to distribute to your people is how fast that we can get that. We can make it so fast, it's crazy. And then this is shelf style. I'll send you all the info through on nanocures. This is and think your flu vaccines, think any other vaccine. As soon as you have a variant, because of the real-time data of testing at home, however many units you can do, or you have them at clinics, depending on where you are, which countries, but it starts to stop the spread because people aren't going to travel somewhere to find out if they've got the virus to start with, or going to get a vaccine. Okay, so you already cut both those out. This is the first time that people can self-administer something that usually is subcutaneous. And they've got a dermal one, ophthalmological one, 4 seconds blood to brain, doesn't need to go into your respiratory system. So you're talking people nil to mouth. You're talking children with anti-malarial drugs, being able to deliver anti-nausea medications to children in Africa that are very cheap and sustainable. And these things are stable for years. Those other vaccines that you're making, you've got to have them sub-freezing temperatures. The nanolipids, which you need for the supply, are very expensive and short in stock. That's the reason you're seeing bottlenecks. These guys don't have that problem. And so we're working with them right now, and I've pretty much put all of what I have able in my hands, which funnily enough is quite a lot. I can do a lot of things and open some serious doors when I want to push things, because I've got a really great reputation in my government and business world, and of just being a good guy, nice guy. That's what it comes down to. People are like, how do you get it? Yeah, man, you must be really ruthless in this. And I'm like, no, you don't have to be any of that. I said, if you're nice and you're honest with people, you can get really far. You can get very, very far. I'm telling you, that's all I am. And and so yeah, we're looking at the moment like at how best to approach this from a. We're not wanting to push the pharmaceutical guys. We're going to give them the option, and we're going to do the second phase clinicals have just been finished. We got nil. We got nothing as far as any type of side effect or any contraindications. It seems to have no adverse effects on. Oh, and this is safe for children. So this is the first pediatric solution for COVID right now, and this is scalable. This is doable, and I'm going to make it happen. Like I said to Steve, I'm like, you don't want to see me go once I start going. And it's been 5 days, and I've been able to do more with for nanocures, and they've done a lot. Obviously, this is not easy work in many years. But just to get them over the final line, that's what I specialize in. I'm a catalyst, and I'm like, cool, let's get this done, because this can save the fucking planet. And look, even with Brazil, I was speaking with Brazil this morning with my co-producer around this project. We're talking about the Choice Project and showcasing these technologies. And he's been fighting to try getting vaccines into Brazil with a bunch of different government officials down there, and they want them down there. Like, a lot of upper class citizens and stuff. He's a very influential guy. I have dying for him. Like, I literally, they asked me to help them out in finding things, and like it's like dealing with the Russian mafia. If you want to get the Sputnik one, you got to deal with the Chinese mafia to get the Sinovac one, which is super I don't agree with either of the science behind either of them. And that's why we're seeing stuff like with that AstraZeneca, major issues there. The way that they're producing, same as these new mRNA vaccines that are coming out, they have no, like Moderna's, we've got no idea. We got no clinical data on those things. You're going to put that stuff in your body, man. I can't tell you what the hell's going to happen in 2 to 3 years from now to you. We don't know. We've got no clue at all. There's no clinical evidence. They've got over 30 years of research on this type of. That's why Hep B vaccinations are so readily available and safe, and you get very minimal issues with Hep B vaccines. That's why most people travel and don't like to get one. It's not an issue. Oh, cool. I'm not going to get Hep B. It sounds like a pretty good one to go and get. And they've also got a whole suite of nanotechnologies as well for. They've got like a sunscreen, stops like viruses and bacteria as well. So. They say like a sunscreen. It's like think of it like your hand sanitizer, but it will effectively continue to stop killing viruses and bacteria for days, up to months. Yeah, and they've got that for like thin layer surfaces. So, like say like an ATM, for instance, you can spray this stuff on there. 30 days, there's not going to be any transference. So all these people wiping and the petroleum companies rubbing their hands together at the moment, and every ethanol distillery on the planet freaking making hand sanitizer. This kind of destroys their business model a bit. I like destroying inefficient business models. People because this way it's especially with like nanocures, the other groups aren't going to have a fucking clue where these guys came from. In a week, they're going to be scratching their heads, going, "What the?" And these guys have such big government. I've got them now lined up with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies on the planet, who I don't mind at all. They're actually they do contract manufacturing pretty much for other big pharmaceutical companies. And they will make sure that this is done the right way. So they have that protection from a corporate level, which is really important. You cannot bring these technologies that are so revolutionary into the open market without, you're going to get backlash always. But if you can come in and say, hey, we've got a solution, you guys can all use it. We're happy to work with all of you. You can integrate it in. We'll save all your asses and your vaccines. And hey, we've got this other technology. We can actually do diagnostics, self-administration. So what they effectively are offering the pharmaceutical industry isn't a challenge. It's the first time they can do B2C on all of the drugs that have to normally be administered through a third-party health worker or doctor. That's a whole massive market. It's B2C pretty much for everything from, we'll see stuff like the wafers, like andinestrin, great drug, AstraZeneca's drug for anti-nausea, wafer, put on your tongue. What happens if you got your nearby mouth? You know what I mean? Or severely dehydrated or something. This is an amazing opportunity. And the fact that we can talk about childhood cancer vaccines that are very effective that have been developed. So one of the groups that I've put them in contact with, Baylor out of Canada, they've been working on children's vaccines for many years, and they're very interested in being, and anyone is, to be a contract manufacturing partner or a partner of these guys. Because you can see realistically their technology is going to touch almost every person on this planet in the next 2 years, year two, 100%. And so the first story we're telling in Choice is actually the story of nanocures and this amazing technology and the impact it's going to have. And so that's what my meeting was before this, actually, how we're going to structure and document that, because this has all happened in the last few weeks. And I didn't even know who nanocures was, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And I actually was sent their deck my fault. I get sent a lot of decks. I got sent their deck like earlier this year, and I just overlooked it. I was just like, oh man, vaccines, I'm not going to get involved in this one. I read the front title and was just like, I don't think this is of course, I'm an idiot. Finally, I got resent it again by another good friend. He said, you need to check this out, man. This is big. And as soon as I read through it, I saw what it was. I went, oh my God, I got to ring Steve and say, Steve, I'm going to open up all the doors I've got for you, man. Let's make this happen. So that's going to be a great story to tell. Real time. It's going to be a good one. So yeah, super excited to be able to have the capacity to help the planet. That's my big thing. Have the tools, be able to do it, the right people around you. And if one man, if one guy from barefoot hippie from, northern New South Wales, Australia, can move mountains and government doors, then a bunch of people together can do a lot of work. And people think that you're not going to be able to go into this country or go there and do that. I do the impossible every day. Because no one told me I couldn't do it. And no one
So it seems to me, we're headed in the future. Instead of having a chemical, trying to heal the body, we're going to use the quantum, which has total wisdom to actually cure the body. Because all diseases come from disease. Whether the body's not at ease or the mind's not at ease. It's all interconnected.
Exactly. And this is the cool thing as well. Why we want to document it's from the educational perspective. People don't understand vaccines. They don't have an effing clue, to be honest. Same as people talk about climate change. They don't have a clue about it though. They'll be like, yeah, like season the war, this and that, but they don't really understand like thermal heating of the planet, how the Earth breathes and expands and releases the heat that it has in it and brings it back in, how solar energy and solar flares and these types of things affect greatly. It's so much science and it's so dense an area. I do not profess for a second, and I've been working with guys like Professor Adam Trombley, who was Buckminster Fuller's understudy. Professor Trombley set up the Project Earth in 1984. Okay, he knows what he's talking about. All right, they're the guys I listen to. I don't know, like I look at the news and people send me articles, and I think, who's this written by? Like if it's written by someone like Adam, then I'm like, okay, I'll take this seriously. And Steve is one of those guys. Steve, father, was the head of the NDS, and he was, I can't remember what department. He was the leading immunologist in the US. He grew up in labs, in immunology labs. So he knows this subject so well. This is his life's work and passion. And just like I am with the plants and with people, that he knows these things. So when Steve talks about vaccines and explains to you how this process differs, because it's yeast, you're using yeast and sugar in a bioreactor to create it. It's an organic method. You could make it organic. If you use organic sugars and an organic oleic oil, it's a totally organic process. You aren't taking the virus and then working out. You're actually like working out how to bring out an antigen. You are actually mimicking the body's own response and setting it off. So that's why it's an immuno booster, really, because it's setting off your body's own natural ability to fight off a virus. It's just replicating that and giving you an extra like boost up of what you're already doing when you get hit with the virus. And that's why this is going to be very effective.
It's kind of like homeopathy. Similar.
Well, it's not like homeopathy. We've got to be really careful with that one. No, it's actually like it's based on the same principles that the hepatitis B vaccine is made. So we use yeast, sugars to isolate and grow the actual. I know a lot about it from the biosynthesis of cannabinoids. I'm a leading medical cannabis expert, and so we can produce you at scale. This is why these extraction groups and a lot of groups that are getting into CBD, if anyone's listening to this and thinking of investing at some stage, don't. Because we can literally produce you hundreds of kilos of CBD or CBG or CBD, whatever, whichever cannabinoid you want at scale using lavender, sugar, and yeast. I don't even have to use a cannabis plant to make that. So there goes so you're talking the capacity in days to produce something. That lavender is a pretty easy thing to grow. The key with lavender is plant it and you don't look at it if you want to do really well. I've killed lavender from over attending plants. A friend of mine is a lavender farmer. I visited him. He said, no, you got to plant it and you never look at it again. That's the best way to grow lavender. It grows really well like that. I like a lot of the Mediterranean herbs grow, obviously. So yeah, that's when you're talking about the capacity to scale and the safety of this, it's a whole new world. And then when you're talking self-administration, talking real-time analytics. So this is the step for this. This will stop clinical trials. The reason being is you won't need second and third phase because you will get real-time data as you want daily. You can get it like instantly, multiple times daily. So the reach that you can have, these guys' third phase clinical will be 75,000 people globally. And I'm going to be part of that clinical trial for sure. I am very careful with what being from the pharmaceutical industry and that medical development world, I can ring one biochemist or pharmacognetist or a toxicologist and say, should I take this medication or should my mom take this blood pressure medication, doctor? And they'll say no or yes. It's got heaps of safety evidence behind it. It's, it's proven. And all you need to do is, if you want to look at pharmaceuticals, this is just from like the armchair chemist kind of due diligence point, is check out if any of the Scandinavian countries have banned the product. Okay, if they have, there's a pretty good clinical evidence behind it, or if Germany has, So that's kind of my go-to point.
Yeah.
Australia's like dumping ground for first world pharmaceuticals. So we'll end up with shitty drugs that are 5 years old that are still getting produced under contract, and our government will buy them, even though they're superseded and have been banned in the US, banned in Europe, banned in 50 other countries. You still get prescribed it by your doctor here for 10 more years. It's a ridiculous place for that. So you want to be really up on or have a friend that's like I do, that's in the pharmaceutical world, that you can ring and say, hey, what do you reckon about this drug? Because I'm not really sure. But yeah, one of the easiest ways to do is Google and see if it's available in Germany, and it's probably got very good safety data. If it's available in a lot of the Scandinavian, Denmark and stuff, probably got really good clinical evidence to prove that it works. And if it doesn't, or something has happened and they've taken off the market, it's for a reason, and you probably shouldn't take it.
Exactly. So it seems to me, Kenny, that I think humanity has to have a combination of being a custodian of the earth, like all the indigenous people around the world, and maybe just a little bit of consumerism. Just a little bit. Right now we're totally overreacting. We need to take care of this planet. So a custodian, like the Aborigines or indigenous people. Let's say before the white man came, Australia was a pristine land. They knew, what to do with the land, and the land talked to them. Literally, the land talked to them. But people would a lot of Westerners, they don't understand that concept at all. But here it is. Everything is alive. I mean, literally everything is alive. You and I know.
We've all had a moment with nature once in our lives, even if you're in the middle of the densest city in China with major environmental degradation around you, or wherever you are. You've had a moment, whether it was with a bee or a butterfly or a wasp that stung your ass. We've all had a moment with nature, and we just forget that connection isn't something that is when we go on holidays once a year and you have a bushwalk somewhere, or that one time you went and visited that waterfall somewhere and had that moment. It's every moment right now, like you said, we're all interconnected, and it's all living. This planet is a living being. It is full of, we're starting to understand mycelium systems now, mushroom networks that are larger than the size of half states. God knows what those mycelium networks were like before all the big oaks were cut down across Europe for boat building or for cathedral building. Those mycelium systems could have. I work with a group right now that are working on a supercomputer that's based on mycelium systems, because their real-time data of a mycelium system will tell you the health of an entire forest. So you're talking like the redwoods, for instance, like the mycelium network that connects them. You can probe on one side to the other side of that mycelium mat, and real time get data. Like you can see real time. You can probe it, and it's the other side, 3,000 kilometers away. 300 kilometers away. You can still test, and you can tell that probe is getting probed on the other side. We can still test it. It's incredible. It's its own supercomputer network. Nature has all of the solutions. This is where we're going to look at nature as being not just something we have to say, but it's like, no, we need to utilize nature right now, and the enzymes that we're finding that break down petrochemicals, or the fungi that we're using to break down plastics, and to convert them into carbon and sequestrable, bacteria. Like the fact that we're using the fertilizer industry is a joke. Okay, coming from the ag and med tech world, it's an absolute joke. There are some good companies doing the right thing, but most of it is a complete waste of and unnecessary destruction of the planet that comes with. We've known for over 20-30 years about atmospheric nitrogen and bacteria that fix atmospheric nitrogen into plants. Okay, they're cheap, very effective. You can do them as a seed spray now. You can crop dust this stuff. It's safe and organic. That plant doesn't need nitrogen then. One of the major nutrients. Well, guess what? We found we could do it with potassium as well. So we can now fix nitrogen, and above us in like a 10 square foot area above you right now, 1 kilometer above you, you have over 10 tons of atmospheric nitrogen sitting there, free, doesn't cost anything. Fertilizer companies can't harvest that one and sell it to you yet. They haven't figured it out. But and don't be wrong, when they do, they'll find out some way. But right now, yeah, it's something readily accessible. A lot of specialty farmers, organic farmers, biodynamic farmers are moving over to these methodologies that have been accessible for years and years and years. Like I can bring back your humates, your fulvate levels, your carbon levels, and your micro, and we'll eventually go back with your microbiology and micro in the soil again at a well, humates and fulvates I can do at 68 cents per hectare. Now, you can't do that with phosphates. You can't do that with other fertilizers. No one can come close to that. And that means that you can start building the soil, the biome of the soil again. And we have lost 90% of our living soil on this planet right now. That should be our number one focus. Get the mycelium systems back in place. Put in proper silvopasture methods, which are proven to be more cost effective, cheaper, more economical, and easier for the farmers to produce. So it's the only people that are winning and are ruining food security right now, fertilizer companies. Big ag. Big ag is responsible for most of the food wastage that we see. Well, I don't care if my carrot looks like it's 3 inches with a 1/2 inch indentation on one side. If it's not got the indentation, that shouldn't mean that my product as a farmer becomes half its price, even though it's exactly nutritionally the same as the fucking carrot that looks a bit differently. That's just the dumbass. That's not the consumer. That's the business. It's if you had options of all the different looking fruits that came off the apple tree every year, you would have all these different. A friend of mine, amazing naturopath and nutritionist, and he always goes for the fruit that's had some damage, especially if it's like an insect damage. So like a caterpillar's bitten a little bit of that apple. Well, it's saying that to me that nature knows that that's safe. That hadn't got a pesticide on it, because otherwise that caterpillar wouldn't have touched it. It was not full of chemicals. That means that beetle probably, it tasted good for that beetle just like it tastes good for you. And the fruit itself recognizes this. It builds more of a nutritional analysis based on knowing it's got to hopefully produce this full fruit before it's completely damaged. So it's set off a bunch of antioxidants, and anthocyanin levels change. There is a lot to be said there, and this is just education. It's just people don't really understand food. But as I was saying before, we open a fridge up and we just think, oh, there's a tomato. They don't realize that, yeah, there was 20 kilos of tomatoes thrown away for that 1 kilo of tomato that were really good. And those went into, other things. But the amount of food wastage we have on this planet is really not on the average Joe Blow at home who's like, I didn't eat 20% or 30% of my food this week, I'm throwing it in the bin. Yeah, that's a huge problem. But it's more, I worked on organic carrot farms, okay? And I can tell you think organic carrot farms, man, going to be really good. We throw 70% of the fucking carrots on the fucking ground and they get mulched up. That's it. This is for supplying Sainsbury's. These guys are playing Sainsbury's in the UK with their organic carrots. Those carrots had to be a certain size, certain length, a certain look, and anything else was thrown on the ground because it wasn't worth doing anything with it. They're the problems that we face right now, and that's because those businesses are choosing those models. They do it deliberately because it pulls the rug out of the farmers, and so that's where I'm a real worry for the farmer. You'll hear me many times, and usually farmers are tied with indigenous groups, tied with first world people, are usually the lowest in the chain. And I work with a great group called Producers Market. These guys are they're pretty much opening up, get rid of the middleman, telling the story back to the producer, and bringing a platform in place so that it efficiently kind of cuts the costs by about 8 to 15% and brings those profits back to the farmer. It's a great model, and they've got the Indian government on with it.
That is a great model. Yeah, exactly. Because the middleman's the one who makes all the profits, and the farmers barely survive.
Yeah.
Right?
And all the problems, all major issues, like the world of commodity trades in the ag space is people think when they see those, seeing people at Wall Street back in the day, on the floor and looks really intense, mate, those places have nothing on an ag trading company. Those ag traders are ruthless. They will literally destroy you for $2 on a metric ton of soybeans, destroy you and your company. They make the share guys look like nothing. And that's the problem. Those are the guys that are the issue, because they're the ones that are inflating prices based on day-to-day trading that doesn't exist. It's just an inflated smoke and screens type, same as publicly listed companies making press releases. They ring one friend, say this, ring another friend, say this, and then all of a sudden they're getting 10 cents extra on the ton of soybean. The farmer never sees a dime of that.
Right. Now, I wrote a real simple book on conscious economics, and my whole theory, even I wrote a book on conscious politics, and this is where the shift, in my eyes, has to occur. And daily, in every action that a human being takes, it should be based on kindness, compassion, tolerance towards others. If we as a society, as a world, had human beings doing that on a day by day, moment by moment, no matter what kind of job you had, you're not in a job for the company and the CEOs and the shareholders to make big bucks. You're in the job to help humanity. And I think that is where the creative minds of humanity has to change from, I call it the concept of going from me to we. Right now in the West, it's all me driven, my company, my this, my that.
Yeah, and this is I look, you have two critical points there. I definitely agree with you, Richard. When it comes to conscious capital, like my business partner, Rowan, I say it time and time again, he will probably be one of the top 10 businessmen here in Australia, under 40 in the next 5 or 6 years, for sure, maybe in the next year or two. And he has an exceptional ability to sniff out early technologies in investment rounds that are incredibly beneficial for humanity, but mainly based in the fintech space. So he's been in the crypto world since 2012, knows it better than anyone, knows all those big players, has an exceptionally good, I'll have to send you, he has a video conference that he did for about 100 odd people who had asked him a lot of questions with everything that's happening with Bitcoin and everything else at the moment. I don't get overly involved in it. I like its ability to give the sovereign rights back. I like the essence of what it stands for, the original white paper. How that actually gets implemented is yet to be seen. Rowan has the exact model for that and how that could and should work, which it comes back to giving people their sovereign rights. But people ask me, if you could do one thing right now, Ken, like you've got all these big things, if I could wave a magic wand, I say this to a lot of groups, it's a great question to ask groups that are coming through that are pitching you an investment and saying, well, if I could wave a magic wand, what could I do right now for you? And if I could make one decisive change on the planet right now that I think would solve many of the issues we face right now, trust. You get people to trust to get each other again. That's all it is. It's a bottleneck in business. It's a bottleneck in relationships. It's a bottleneck in financial, governmental, everything. The lack of trust is a major bottleneck for industry. And that's something that we want to start to. I work with a group called Love or ID. I'm an ambassador for them and an early investor. They are effectively stopping counterfeiting. They're working with track and tracing partners. They are like the consumer last mile is what they call themselves. They're consumer authentication. They're 3.0 on a QR code, which I didn't know much about a year ago. Now I know a lot about. They're easily fakeable. So these guys do a presentation if you have a QR code system or track and trace system where they online with you real time fake your QR code and show you how to do it. The tech guy gets on and does it in like 7 minutes. And you're like, oh man, this is really not so, it's not really doing what it's meant to be doing as far as. So these guys have effectively stopped counterfeiting of agriculture, and now moving into everything from document integrity through to Louis Vuitton and fashion houses are looking at them. It's major wineries, anything that's getting counterfeit, pretty much. This is your solution for that. It's cost effective, can be utilized with existing printing equipment. It's just it's a fingerprint. Every single item gets its own fingerprint, pretty much. As long as you've got a camera on your device, you don't need an app. They do not store any data. They're agnostic to work with any provenance technology groups and any blockchain groups. And that's why they're expanding fast. And this is a solution. There's a solution available right now to stop counterfeiting, the amount of waste there. And that brings consumer trust back. Marketing doesn't even work anymore because the consumer doesn't trust anything. They don't trust companies. You know what I mean? Like every advertising campaign is based on, let's trick the consumer into purchasing our product. Not let's want the let's get the consumer to trust our product to a level where we know
Yeah,
it's
well,
always
trick, right. Exactly.
yeah,
Well, it is, I
exactly.
think, one of the other major problems, I think, for humanity, I wrote a book, but it's based upon, research. Pandora's box is companies like Facebook and Google. They hire the best behavior scientists in the world to make you addicted to their product. So basically, people are so addicted. I don't know, wherever you go, you see people walking down the streets, looking at their cell phones.
And that's
They,
the and that's
they,
why we're taking. Yeah, it's amazing. That's why we're looking at that specific problem right now to address with our choice project by adding a VR and app based educational platform. But it's what it really is. It's an incentification. This is all the people need. If you can give them trust and incentification, you back it with that, you
Mhm.
can work on wonders and you can really move mountains. Yeah, I 100% agree with Richard. Like it's one of those things that we need to connect now through this digital interface point because it's too late to be able to like, hey, you'll go back to reading books again. Put your Kindle down. It's not, and it's the use of those technologies efficiently to do the same thing. So I'm like, well, fuck it. I will get everyone their own finger connected to the NanoCures device, and Lava is going to be integrated on that, which gives you your own sovereign rights to record your own. Because remember, they don't store your data. You can.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you can have your data on your own sovereign right. This is you, and you don't need a. It would dismiss the need for digital passports because of facial recognition and fingerprint recognition and the other things we use anyway at the airports that are already
Mhm.
integrated. It would completely negate the need for a document. They're already kind
Yeah.
of they've already come up with a solution for that. That Adobe DocuSign and VeriSign have just signed up to them as well to do this on their document verification. Put these fingerprints on there. So for me, it's like think about all of the human trafficking at the moment. If you can give everyone one of those fingerprints, man, and I mean literally now there are safe biomarkers. Like, and people are like, oh man, I don't want a biomarker. You 100% have biomarkers. You have if you have consumed or if you use one of 1,600 products that have those biomarkers in there, it's very standard everyday items like cosmetics, shampoos, toothpaste that have nanoparticulate technologies in there. You already have a nanomarkers, like guaranteed. If you've touched BPA plastics, if you've got a bus ticket once in your life, you will definitely have an imprint of that plastic in your system. It's the same thing. So there's a company called TrueTag, they're a provenance technology group, and they can put a biomarker into a seed, grow that plant, and then you harvest seed off that plant or whatever it is you harvest, corn, let's say you put corn in.
Mhm.
I can track that all the way to the consumer, and I can say that corn was grown in Waka there in that region, in that field, and it was that plant. Okay, there's another group they work with that confirm that on another level called source
Mhm.
certain. They do mineral analysis, so they can tell you exactly to the square meter where that grape was grown in that bottle of wine
Oh,
that you're
wow.
consuming on the other side of the planet. Yeah, so they work with those guys on their provenance technology side. They work with
Mhm.
an IoT tracking system. These guys are one of the largest logistics companies. They have their own IoT trackers they use for their own logistics and diagnostics. So they have the best real-time data currently available of shipping and aviation on the planet. So they put these trackers in there if you're a
Mhm.
client of theirs. And so they're a partner of Lava's as well, a strategic partner. So I can tell you that container sitting in that port in Chile at 21 degrees or 15 degrees right now with that wine in there. And if anyone even moves a bottle, we'll know straight away. Every one of those bottles is with the fingerprint on there is the consumer's recognition as well. So you as a consumer can click on that and go, oh, it's that wine, that Malbec from Santiago that I'm drinking. It's grown here by Jorge, and it was transported on that day on that batch number from here to there, went from there to there, and you'll see how what it'll do is it kind of fucks up a lot of the logistics companies as well who piss around with making money on what look like illogical shipping routes. Because when
Mhm.
you're starting to look at those routes and you go, what the fuck did they take? They took this bottle of wine to US and then it went from the US on a plane to this place in Switzerland where it was distributed to me, my restaurant where I'm sitting in Italy up in the mountains right now. You go, fuck, what a fucking, it went around the world twice to get to me, this bottle of wine. And so it's going to be a really effective tool, but it does it in a non, they're complementary to other groups because every time everyone that sees them goes, oh man, this is going to be, when we first got shown them, I worked with a very prominent guy out of Silicon Valley. It's a major rainmaker in Silicon Valley, and helped shape a lot of the bigger companies there. And the people that you're talking about, like Google, that they hire, it's like his company that pretty much he went around the planet 30 odd years ago, finding the best, 40 years ago, best of the best IT people, hackers, you name it, like eccentric, crazy Australians like me. He found me, actually. He's one of my mentors and then a good friend. He was major force behind the structure, but he did the same thing I do. I just surround myself with the best people I can find, the best experts, and have them in my network in such a way that I can deploy anyone within that network very quickly and find you the polymer expert or the ag tissue culture expert or whatever it is, neurosurgeon. You need a photonic light engineer, I'll find you one tomorrow. So it's really interesting to see how the development of these different technologies, how we can then best integrate them back again. So I was looking at, how do I bring lava in? How do I use the choice project? Because what I'm doing, we want to showcase these technologies like pyrolysis, like water treatments that we have, and waste to energy conversion, all these things that are available today. And we were getting a sales agreement for these companies. So what I'm doing is putting the online platform together. So you're not just watching these things that I'm going, oh, well, that seems like a really good, idea that's, we should fucking integrate, or I wonder how you actually get access to that, or anything. Boom, straight through. You can buy or access these services or these technologies, license them, patent them, sub-license in your region, depending on what it is. We just want to make sure we have that platform available so that these things can be integrated easily. And then the other thing was, how do I connect with kids first? Okay, so that's where we're like, all right, my kids love Minecraft. They're crazy for Minecraft. So I don't mind it at all. I like to build, the fact that they're building, and it's not, so it's good. It's better than the other video games we play. They're still younger, so I'm sure that will change in a few years from now. But we wanted to recreate a virtual world, two different worlds, but one of pretty much what we face right now. With, let's say, I've got an issue. I've got 50 million tons of tires sitting in Baltimore right now that aren't going to China anymore because the Chinese don't take tires, and they're not doing it anymore. So we have the capacity to stand up a really good industry there. Problem is the distribution points. This is where the the untenable way of growing businesses does not work with these types of technologies, some of them. And that's the reason problem with your pyrolysis. You run out of feedstock, literally, like I run out of tires in 2.5 years kind of thing, even with getting major train lines and working out how to break down the tire, take the steel out, make the process more streamlined. It still only has a profitability margin of X amount of years. And that's why the investors don't want to go near it, because they don't know what to do with that technology or that kind of industrial build out anymore. So they just don't bother even looking at it. I mean, we see it with heaps of different industries and industrial assets that just sit depreciating across countries everywhere. That could easily be retooled.
I got one more question to ask you about this. Tesla, don't you think he got most of his inventions in silence? Through, and don't you think that, imagine if every single human being, if they were connected to their breath, really aware of their breath moment by moment, automatically, trust is there, wisdom is there, knowledge is there, and also the sense of the unity of, there's a web that ties us all together. Don't you feel, I feel like when humanity feels that web, which you strongly do, because that's what you're passionate about, is helping the Mother Earth, and you have scientists all around the world who are beginning to tap into it. But don't you think that's just the main missing ingredient in humanity, where we're not
That's it.
connected?
You just if you just got to switch them back on again. Tesla knew how to do it. Rishis, like the rishis of old, there's many curanderos and monk shamans, wise women and men across the planet that are switched on. And there's different levels of that, of course. It's not just like boom instantaneously. It's like we talk about it with levels of enlightenment, samadhi in the Vedic culture, and so there's different levels, there's different grades, like anything. You work your way up and you get switched on a bit more and a bit more. I have the capacity to access information instantaneously, which is held within your genomic sequence. Like, so everyone has the capacity to do this. It just requires a lot of work, obviously, but anyone can do it. I really want to. That's one of my major goals, is to be able to educate people on some of the very advanced skills and techniques that I've I've developed myself and also have adapted, because there needs to be a bit more adaptability. Like, it's not really, if you followed the ancient Vedic and yogic texts, you need to be sitting at least for a few months a year, if they recommend, in a jungle on a tiger skin, and you want to take that tiger skin and sit in a cave for a few months up in the Himalayas. And that's not really a practical approach these days. Same as modern day Buddhists. I've got a lot of friends that are Buddhists, lovely people, very close with many, many, many different lamas. And I always say to them, I'm like, and they agree, there needs to be a more integrative modern approach that Western and new seekers can access without it being this incredibly complex, overly faith-based. Yoga is a science. It's a science-based bunch of technologies or techniques, you call them, body technologies, I'd call them, for mastery of oneself and eventually the connection, to get to that connection point. Yogis like myself, we work for the good of all sentient beings. We diligently work. We don't work for the fruits of our labors. It's not what we're here for. So that becomes very difficult with the Buddhists, especially the very advanced ones, because you have to get to the point of non-attachment. And when you get to that point of non-attachment, that's very difficult. That's severance from the perceptual understanding of what we have today, and what you work with on moment by moment is very different, as you know, Richard, of what we actually are and who we are. We are, think of it this way, we are pieces of stardust. We are made up of stardust. We are made up of the universe. We have an atom within us, which is described so eloquently in the Mahabharata, and they're talking to the nanoparticular level. It's a perfect descriptions in there. This is 1600 years ago. This is the capacity that we had, and we still
have
do.
The operating system, we have the hardware and software already built in the day we're born.
We are literally. You got to remember, people say, I do work with different AI groups, and so one of them did a lot of work with the facial recognition technologies, and they wanted to design a camera that could do what I do with plants, and that's to be able to look at a plant like most gardeners can do and say, I reckon in 5 or 6 days from now, that plant's going to need this amount, some nutrition, or it's going to need this or that. You got this inherent knowledge once you know the plants really well and you're connected, that my plants next week, I'll probably give them a feed of seaweed, for some micronutrients, because I can tell. Right now, if I did a plant analysis on that plant, so you take any of the real systems that are in place right now for tracking of agronomic data, and all it's telling you is a presentation of what it is today, not what it's going to be tomorrow. And this is also the future of how we're going to do, like, pharmaceutical industry is like the oldest industry that hasn't done. We've got self-driving vehicles. Okay, let's put it this way: why we don't have a self-driving systems in place for healthcare is ridiculous. It's and that's why I like NanoCures and these guys and their approach, because they are bringing that whole system in place, and they're going to be able to deliver in such a way where these guys can't. The momentum that these guys will have so quickly will get them over the line, and everybody will know about nasal technologies within the next 24 months. No matter if you're living as a monk up in in Bhutan somewhere right now, you are going to literally know about this technology. You'll see it, and it's going to save a lot of people's lives. And I'm about someone that works in palliative care. I do a lot of death doula work. I see a lot of people who are dying. People ask me, yeah, it must be, yeah, this is a weird thing to do, and especially with strangers. Like coming to strangers is one of the most important, powerful moments of their lives and their families' lives around them. It's a massive honor. It's a huge honor, and all people really want, man, is the same thing as little kids, and they just want to be loved, and they want to be told that you just want someone to hold your hand and tell them that someone loves them. That's all anyone wants to really fucking hear when they're dying. The rest of it becomes, no matter who you are or what it is, there is a moment that everyone gets, and it's this transition point. Sometimes it happens days before people pass. Sometimes it's happened to them years before they pass. Yeah, like myself. And so it kind of removes that fear of death. Like it just naturally happens. It's not something you work towards. It's one of these things where you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize. Or you've been surfing for years and you just you've surfed for 2 hours and you realize, I didn't think once that whole time. You're just in the zone, in that mindfulness space. And surfers come to me all the time and they're like, oh man, can you teach me how to meditate? And I'm like, I don't need to teach you to meditate. I'm like, when you paddle out the water, I said, do you think about anything? They're like, no, it's just just the waves and the ocean. And I'm like, there you go, man. I said, you meditate already like a couple hours a day. Just keep surfing.
So it's kind of like, don't you think humanity has to learn intuition? For example, about 6 times a year, right before, maybe 2 hours before I go to bed, my body tells me, Richard, your body needs rest. If you don't want to wake up sick tomorrow, I strongly advise you to go to bed now. So I tell my wife that, and she always laughs, and says, yeah, go to bed, because 99% of the time it works, so in that field of intuition is all around us, but we are so busy that we don't listen.
and it's inefficient. It's people like they look at what I do, and people call me like a polymath savant, and all these other things. I can process really fast. Like, yes, I can definitely process fast, very, very fast. And got a really good analytical mind. So good at sorting the information out and making it practical, logical, and efficient. And so you don't want to. I had a photographic memory as a child. Was at a major accident and it was in a coma, and kind of reduced my photograph. But thank God, it was horrible. People were like, oh, it must be awesome. I'm like, no, it's the most horrible thing ever. You realize how flawed people's ability to analyze and then extrapolate data from their day-to-day events. Good friends of mine, love them to death. We all grew up together. Some of their memories are 3 or 4 different experiences we had over a year period that they've now merged into a singular period. Or they've taken a little bit from this night and this little bit from this night and they've combined them together. And for some reason, all of them agree until I go, they know, they obviously grew up with me. So they're just like, hey, can you remember that? I'm like, yeah, I remember the number plate, what you were wearing, what the time was, what the weather was, what I was thinking at the time. I mean, literally, I used to be able to flip like 1,000-page book and walk to school and read the book at whatever speed I wanted to. And I'd read 4 or 5 books a day. I was so well read at one stage. When I was young, my parents would take me to bookstores. Couldn't find books that I hadn't read. Like, I mean, literally whole aisles in bookstores. I devoured books. My grandfather was probably the most well-read man I've ever come across. Incredible man. He was a yogi, a very advanced one, but he never called himself that. He lived up to every principle of the highest saptic ways of living. Was one of the most giving, sharing, but practical man. Like, he was very practical. He wasn't, if you fell over, you're small, you fell over, you bumped your knee, he'd wipe it off and get your Band-Aid or whatever else. But he wouldn't be, you poor thing, da 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 da. He'd be like, well, that's what happens when you're running in the backyard. My grandma would be the one you go run to and say, oh, can I get a hug? Say, oh, you poor thing. And so he was an absolutely incredible individual. Taught me to play chess at about 2 years old, and the power of his mind and his intellect was second to none on this. He stopped playing chess at 67 because he couldn't see 7 moves ahead anymore, and he thought that's his chess game's over. So he stopped playing. Yeah, he was a chess master for many years. He was part of the Hungarian Revolution. He was actually there on the day. All of his friends who were intellectuals were killed on the day in Mohyomorhe in 1956 in Hungary.
That's 56, wasn't it?
Yeah, 56 in Mohyomorhe. So
Yeah.
my grandfather was on leave. He was in a very specialized force called the Border Guards. They actually weren't in the military. It was the Russian ministry at that stage. And he was on 2 weeks leave. And anyway, his friends, all intellectuals, a very well-read guy. They talked him into going to the protest that day that set off the whole revolution. And he ended up saving 6 people. Of 116 odd people were killed that day. And it was like only like 130 odd people there or something, they think. And he went back in, saved on his bike 5 or 6 different, obviously highly trained, and then had to disappear straight away over the border so the Russians didn't kill him, got citizenship in Switzerland, and was living happily in Switzerland. He's like, I don't know why I ever left. I said same thing to him. I'm like, man, you're telling me I could have got Swiss citizenship? But his mum and sister had emigrated and dad to Australia at that stage about a year before. So this is in 57. And he was living a very good life. They'd sorted him out. He was an engineer, so he was working as like in a fitter and turner, an engineering job. You're getting good money, living in Switzerland, probably the best quality of life anywhere you could be on the planet at that stage in the 50s. And add all the cultural things that an intellectual man like him would like. And anyway, his sister and mum talking him into come to Australia, all these letters, come to Australia. And one of his friends at the time said to him, don't go to Australia. And he's like, how do you fucking know anything about Australia? He's like, I go there twice a year. He's like, he was Nestle's representative in Australia. And like the head of like the Asian region or something. And so he said, no, you don't want to go there. It's a fucking backwards place. And then this is 1950s Australia. So you go from one of the more progressive places and intellectual powerhouse places to Melbourne, Australia, which at the time was pretty much fishing villages, 3rd generation convicts, still slavery. Literally, like they were still using slave workers, stolen generation, Australian Aboriginals, things like if you wanted to get offal, so like today, like pate is everywhere. Okay, so there's a lot of Hungarian dishes use a lot of offal, and they would have to lie because you would get arrested if you said that you were using liver or kidney or something to make food for human consumption. They would have arrested you then. So he's come from this arrives here, meets my grandmother. Grandmother's a Holocaust survivor. She's Hungarian, Jew. My grandfather's not the most atheist man you'll ever meet, okay? But he knew history better than anyone else, so he had a right to, and he could take down any professor. I'd be sorry if I was a theologist and I went near him in a debate, put it that way. And so everything from all the the foundations of a lot of the stories that became the basis for religions and stuff like that. Like he knows that the Hittites and the Sumerians and the Chaldeans, he'll tell you the exact history of them as well as any historian on the planet. And so, and had the power to disseminate it really well. But he was really, really humble guy. Like he was super, super humble. Even in the military, the one promise that he made them to take him is they'd never give him a rank. He said he'll do whatever for them, just don't give him a rank. Doesn't want a rank. He had many opportunities to become very, very rich very quickly in his life, which he turned down because they weren't honest approaches to how to make that money. And so yeah, he was a really interesting, really, really interesting, and a massive smartass. He was one of the best till the day he died, late 80s. Yeah, it's just a great guy and so open, and a question I ask, and Richard, I'll ask you this question, and I ask a lot of people I meet around the planet is, what's your take on, where we came from? What's your, because I've asked some of the leading minds on the planet this question, astrophysicists, mathematicians, biologists, you name it, researchers, and it's my grandfather, like he had one of his approach and what he could deduce as best as possible, and this has been kind of backed by a number of different people who have said the exact same thing to me as well, is we're definitely an experiment. If we're not an experiment, I'll eat my shoe. Like it's just, there's way too many factors. So why is there no other primate on this planet now have some evolutionary step forward on the same path that humanity had? Come on. Like that would have to have happened, at least one genetic mutation one time. Well, dude, I know that's talking once every, look, from a genomics, perspective. Yeah, it doesn't seem really possible or pragmatic, seeing as every other species has those. You can see different offshoots here and there. And so, yeah, Richard, I'll ask you that question, man. What's your take on where we all come from? Because that was one of the most intelligent men in my life, and that was his
For,
answer. And
for me, life is kind of like a video game. That and the video game is to go from darkness to light. And basically in our and this video game has been going on for literally trillions of years. You can never clap your hands and say, okay, I've gone through all the levels. Even before this universe was created, the video game of life still existed. And even I think that the goal for humanity is to go from me to we. And once we become we, basically that's a unified, so the subconscious mind of man becomes unified. Not, right now, the subconscious of mind is destructive, fearful, anger, throw flames at one another. There's no sense of belonging, no sense of trust. And so when the humanity and the world as one has that awareness, then in my eyes, a new seed is planted somewhere else. And that consciousness, basically planted that seed, and they watch and wait and see that seed grow from a seed to a fruit that bears fruit. So they never get directly involved, but they have people who help and assist along the way. And it's an infinite journey. We can never clap our hands and say, okay, this journey is over. That's what I can kind of put it in a real simple nutshell.
love it. I always love getting people's because they're, like you said, the universe is ever expanding and manifesting, and so the expansion of consciousness, the expansion of one's own, whatever you want to call that prana, that energy, is also similar. So like you said, you can never ever say clap your hands and you get into because there are so many different manifestations right now. If we were to take a single slice of this being one part of a thread of multiple universes that are at the same rate expanding, then you would then have to have the necessary elements as well to be part of understanding each element of that expansion, which it's like you said, so vast. It's there's a lot there. I think the yogis, the old Vedic texts, they likened it to a string of pearls, and that if this universe was a pearl, those pearls are like I think there's like, they say there's 1.8 billion pearls in the thread.
Yes.
And then there's the threads, there's like limit, and the threads are ever expanding on top of each other. And that's just one, if we were to take one little thread like now. And if you go expand that on every dimension, you're starting to talk things of the power of to the power of to the power of that. Even your big nuclear calculators can't get close to those numbers.
But I think a human being has the capability to be connected to that one pearl, to the entire universe, and still be walking in a human body, because that life force is everywhere, right? So if the life force is everywhere, means you can tap into that life force that is everywhere and be everywhere, but yet still at the same time walk in a human body.
Exactly. So if you think of the thread that connects the pearls as being that single source of energy which flows from the end and to the start of that pearl instantaneously, so you can manifest anywhere along those lines of pearls. And so you literally are existing right now. Like, I think they're up to about 13 to the power of 13 is what they're throwing around the astrophysics world, but the numbers are starting to get back way bigger, and they're more starting to look like what the ancient Vedic civilization was saying and going, no, look, it's way bigger than you think. when people, I work closely with a lot of groups in neurodegenerative illnesses. I find myself within the cannabis world for that reason, and it's also found me now in the psilocybin world and in the development now of what we're seeing, which should have been done, it has been done by cultures for eons, but the use of these plants for the expansion and growth and understanding, or just the switching on of one's own innate capacity to access these things. So I have worked closely with groups across the planet. I traveled around the world for many, many years, learning from masters, teachers
Well, you know,
about
like ayahuasca, the peyote, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do. I work closely with Salvia divinorum for many, many years. I've got a trilogy, I guess you could say. So she represents the feminine aspect for me. And I don't, people don't really know how to use salvia. I grow salvia in a very sacred spot on a ley line. I've grown her there for 15 years. I have never consumed her. I don't need to access the plant. Same was with cannabis. I enjoy cannabis. I'm a bleeding expert, of course. But at the same time, I can access the plant anywhere. The power that plant has, it's there. You can access it, so you don't need to consume it anymore. A lot of people don't know much about the Guyanese Bushmen and a lot of the Jamaican Bushmen and Rastas. They don't actually go near smoking. A lot of Rastas don't smoke. They only consume it as tea. They don't believe in the psychoactive effects. I think it's negligible for their growth in spiritually. And then you've got the complete opposite. You've got Indian sadhus who consume vast amounts to get into very, very deep states of meditation. And so both accessing the plant, it's just a different approach.
And for me, it's kind of like a tuning point. I had peyote once, after years of meditating, and it was the exact same experience of meditation. And so then I kind of realized that, and the plant even said, you don't need me. You need to just go within. That same experience that people are yearning for exists inside of them. And both John and I don't know if you know it, but my hobby is meditation. It's not like a chore.
Great hobby to have, Richard. Great hobby to have, man. I think one that everyone on this planet should take up at some stage.
Yeah. For me, when I was 18, 19 years old, I would call, meditation going to the movies. That's what, in the movies, you're totally relaxed, and most people watch the movies, and they see lights, hitting the screen, and they get sucked in the story. But if you turn around, you see what is creating that image on the screen is light. So that's why, as a kid, and even to this day, I love watching the source of life inside of me, and I know that same light exists inside everyone and exists inside the whole universe. And universe is, for me, it's like uni is one versal world. There's one frequency time that's all together.
and this is where I think, like, I have another point. I work with a humanitarian group who really want to showcase the capacities that humans have at the moment and do it in a sustainable, educational based kind of structured approach, where you could go to a university, one of these universities we call the Dawn Confederation. You could go to one of the Dawn Institutes, and where you can actually go and learn from masters and learn from teachers about practical, like learn from Indigenous Australian elders about how to listen to ley lines, how to listen to the dreaming songs. These things can be taught. They're not like, just because you don't come from this, like I said to you, Richard, I know you haven't, been here with me yet down in Australia, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to teach you very, very quickly how you can do this. I think you'll have an innate ability to do it very, very fast. And that's where I go, well, where do people go? Like, you can't really, like you said, it's not a common thing. It's that an Aboriginal elder who knows about these things anymore. Very, very rare. And so you need to, or lamas in Bhutan who are practicing very, very old, very advanced techniques, well beyond my pay grade, And
Oh,
but could definitely, I would love to learn those techniques. The same as I've got a very special research and academic pass for the Vatican Library I can use at some stage and take 2 people with me, and I know exactly what I want to look for. And there's a lot of old texts, a lot of 16th century, 15th century Dutch texts when the East Indies Trading Company was going around kind of just finding everything they could and analyzing it.
yeah.
They found a bunch of really interesting things that never were commercialized. So there are a load of compounds right now that sit in day-to-day things that we call weeds. Okay. And a lot of the research was done so long ago, it just kind of got lost, and they changed the botanical literature at that stage. Like Linnaeus kind of, everything kind of changed in mid 16th century. And the way the nomenclature worked for plants and stuff, botanically speaking. So that kind of changed up the whole thing. And I've got a great guy that you should interview sometime. He's an amazing keynote speaker called Michael Melendres from Soil Secrets. He's in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This guy's been documenting and giving heritage designation to like old oaks and trees across the US for 30 odd years, trying to save them, 40 years. He has figured out a way to sequester carbon with soil at a rate that blows hemp or bamboo out of the water. Like it actually blows seaweeds and aquaculture out of the water as well, on its ability to, and it'll kind of, it pretty much works in such a way that it's an enzymatic catalytic kind of solution. So
Yeah.
you can put it over your drip lines and it'll just keep expanding. Like, you put this shit down and you look at the paddock next to it, and like half that paddock now is starting to improve. The soil health starts, because it pretty much switches the soil back on again, and the cation exchanges and everything else. Yeah, absolutely. He's an incredible guy to listen to the soil, food, and the interconnected biome. He puts it in such a presentable way that you can go, oh man, I understand how important soil is. You look at soil, whole different. I like where I watched that documentary the other day, Seaspiracy. It's a documentary about the seafood industry, and one of the most important ones. They've got all these groups going around like Save the Whales and Save the Things. They're all backed by major fishing companies. This documentary is pretty good. It's on Netflix at the moment. I watched it and went, oh, I'm not eating anything from the ocean ever again. I don't think, like, unless I catch it myself. I'm a fisherman, so I'm a diver and stuff. So unless I'm catching it myself, I ain't eating anything from the ocean, because that industry we have decimated the oceans to an extent where with all my solutions and technologies, I can't bring back species yet that are extinct. Yet, okay? We're working on it. We're working on it. They've been working on it for 40 years, so we'll see how they go. Regeneration of a dead cell, like, they're getting close. You'd be surprised. I work with a couple guys in that area, cellular regeneration technologies and stuff, or something they call it. I helped develop a pathway for a delivery mechanism years ago, relating to an antioxidant. So I kind of know a little bit about the anti-aging kind of space, and it's a big area. It's huge. There's a group right now called Younger. I don't know if John shared. I'll send you across. I got sent that deck the other week, and I sent it to all my mates that are over 60, and they're like, "Man, sign me up for it." Supposedly takes 20 years off your life, this treatment. I haven't looked right into it yet. I'm going to check it out. It's actually on my reading material this afternoon to go through. I'll sling it over to you, Richard, to check it out, man. But everyone I've sent it to so far, all my old mates are like, "Hey, line me up for it. I'll sign it. I'll take 20 years off, no problems." There's another group.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the
What do you
Younger.
think about changing brain chemistry? I think that's another main thing.
Oh, that's a big one. I'm big on the brain hacks. I microdosing of psilocybin, I think, is and microdosing in general, when you do the right combinations and you getting the body to methylate properly, is the biggest issue. If you can crack that, man, when it comes to there are so many good brain hacks at the moment. I'm a big believer of a lot of the myceliums. Paul Stamets, absolute hero of mine. In that, guys, and I do not put that word out there very often. I do not have many heroes. I wasn't a kid growing up who idolized anything or anyone. I saw flaws in a lot of things. That guy is an honest guy. He's trying to do his best to save the planet, and I appreciate all his work. So I take his products in 13 different myceliums or whatever. But what he's finding with some of these mushrooms like agaricom and chaga, and what we can do for superbugs that are resistant to any of our medications or antibiotics now, that these things are the solutions and they're natural based. And you're like,
Right.
wow, like
When I'm
that's
talking about brain chemistry, let's go down to the very basics. For every thought that you have, your body gets flooded with probably around 1,500 either positive or negative chemicals. So modern Western man, especially here in the States, imagine the adrenaline faucet is continually flowing and people can't turn it off. And for adrenaline is useful for 1 or 2 seconds, but when it starts to be running around the clock, even when you're sleeping, destructive harm will happen. As you know, for yogis, they know how to control their thoughts. Therefore, by controlling their thoughts, they're controlling their body. So they're producing anti-aging hormones in the human body. Now,
100%.
instead of a Westerner going to a drugstore, if Westerners would realize that the drugstore, the true drugstore, exists inside of us.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
So I don't even think a person even needs anything external. I mean, granted, those are extreme benefits, but if humanity would realize that the eternal drugstore is regulated by us, no one else, it's how we react to a situation is how those chemicals will get released.
And this is actually really cool. There's a group that are working. It's actually tied with Jeff's group. So what they did was the Mars missions at the moment. They're looking for somehow how do you take all of the pharmacopoeia that we have on planet Earth to Mars? Like it's just physically not possible. We have to fill like 20 spacecrafts to supply like a few years. And what happens when you run out of supply? You can't get the feedstocks that you can make to make these things on Mars. Most of them, I'm assuming, will be quite hard. And so what they did was they designed, it's a small box, looks about the size of a SIM card reader, really small, quarter of the size of a phone. You can plug 2 tensor pads into it, you plug it into your phone, screens you for any viruses, bacteria, illnesses, disease, works out exactly what the frequency. So you can molecularly recreate any
Exactly.
And they're just
yeah. And how about the human mind can do that, right?
Well, that's what I always say to people. It's the same with AI. They were designed by people. We just haven't clicked onto yet, but we built this to do this job. Humans made that thing. Okay.
Exactly.
So it wasn't you just made an extra tool in the process. And once we get to the next step of this is the thing. Right now we do not have the diagnostic capacity to look at the energetic fields around the human and understand them and how they interact with what we're talking maybe years from now, I'm not sure, but you want to be able to map out the methylation system real time, the nervous, parasympathetic, post-sympathetic nervous system, the endocannabinoidal system, and the 50 other systems that we haven't even figured out yet. We didn't even know the parasympathetic nervous system existed in post-sympathetic like 20 years ago.
Right, exactly.
So it's not like it's like to say that next year we're going to go, oh shit, the aura thing that people have been talking about, there's actually an energetic field around it, and we've got the proven data and the clinical evidence now to prove that we can modulate that or moderate it through. Look, I do a lot of distance work and energy work and stuff like that, and we've wanted to trial experiment for a while now. And once I fly out of the country, I may do this. I've got a German university and a very big university in the US who want to conduct a trial. And this sounds like something from like MI6 or something, but they want to get a bunch of us that can do these types of things and work on each other from a distance and actually see inside an MRI real time on either end with clinicians there if we can affect any changes in other people that aren't. So it's going to be a very interesting study, like just to see. We're going to look if we can improve immune responses based on it's a safe toxin that they use for drug trials, which causes like really adverse effects for about like nausea and stuff for maybe a few hours. They can give you medication straight away to stop it, so it's not life threatening kind of stuff. And but we're going to see if we can stop that effect. So we're going to give it to them. They're going to get sick. We know they are. Then we're going to work on them, put them in and real time analyze them whilst we're doing this inside an MRI to see if we can affect the changes that we.
And for me, that makes total perfect sense. If light travels at 186,000 miles per second, you could go anywhere, on this planet in less than a second. And all this is, it's like tuning fork, right? You just tune in to the frequency of where you need to go. In a matter of less than a second, you tune into that frequency and you're there, right? Healing.
It's nanoseconds. It is literally, I can find anyone, and I know a lot of advanced yogis probably have the same. We call them cities. So,
cities. Exactly. Yeah.
So we don't.
CDs are there, and for me, CDs are natural powers. They're not supernatural power. Exactly. They're natural. Yeah. We were born with them, but we were taught. Number one, I think the biggest mistake that we were told was stop your daydreaming, Johnny. Stop your daydreaming, Kenny.
Totally.
Daydreaming. That when you stop your daydreaming, you stop your intuition, you stop your knowing, you stop your knowledge,
and manifestation of it, and that's critical. Stops that manifestation point, and people, I can manifest them. What happened was when I started experiencing some of these cities, one of them was manifestation, and pretty much anything. So I, as a third party to trial this, said to my mom, I just recently got divorced. I'd moved back into their place for a few months before I headed off overseas, and I said, I thought the weirdest things happen. Like the last few months, anything I've manifested, it just comes about. And I'm not, obviously I'm a yogi, so I'm not manifesting anything except really practical things, like on a day-to-day basis. Not really but I said I want to test this out. So I asked her if she could come up with something. And so what's the first thing she came up with? She said, "Oh, the back garden you've just done up." And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "What about a really nice, one of those wrought iron gates that goes there?" She said something for a few things to start with, and I was like, "Oh, that could just happen, 1 in 4 chance anyway." I'm like, "It's got to be something really out there." And she's like, "Okay, what about a wrought iron gate?" And I was like, "Well, that's out there. Okay, let's put that out there." I said, "Well, test this out. It just keeps happening to me." I go to work that day. I was working in construction. I'm on my way back, and it's council cleanup. When they put in domestic rubbish cleanups once a year here in Australia. So everyone just dumps all their old crap out the front of their houses to get rid of. And there's this freshly painted wrought iron gate just sitting against a tree with a couple of old paint cans or something. To the extent that I was standing there going, "Is this someone's gate? Am I taking someone's gate here?" And anyway, I grabbed it, and it came gate with the post and everything, with a latch on it, and hinges and stuff. And so I go back, and it's a brick wall between another block wall. Okay, so I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to build out the wall or pack it out, do something here. It fit literally to the centimeter. It was if I'd ordered this gate, it wouldn't have fit better. And she's just like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, let's try this again. She's like, "That's crazy." She's like, "All right, let's try something else." I said, "Look, I can't do anything like manifest you winning the lottery or something like that." But but it was a good lesson. I learned a few things over the next year with having that skill set. And because I wasn't using it for me, I can manifest anything. I can't use it for Ken. Ken cannot just go, "I want to manifest a big freaking house and a Lamborghini tomorrow." It doesn't work like that. If you really needed that, if that was something that was critically important for some way of your spiritual growth, I don't know how that would work. Maybe it's previous karmic credit that you've got to live like that. Then I could probably make it happen for you, catalyze it, or give you the tools to get yourself there, which is a much better approach.
You and I, we are custodian driven versus consumer driven, and that's a huge shift in awareness. I knew at a young age that I could own the whole world, and still, if I had an unruly mind, all those treasures would be lost, wouldn't mean anything. A custodian is like the indigenous people around the world for hundreds of thousands of years. They knew they didn't own the land, but they certainly had the highest wisdom known to man.
100%. And because this is a thing, if you had spoken with me 15 years ago, probably would have got a much more verbose and overly articulate and complex description of something now that I'll explain in a sentence. And you find that with a lot of the masters that you meet, they tend to get much more pragmatic as they get more advanced, and then they tend to also get much more simplified in their approach. So and that's the whole point of being a teacher, you know, like the guru, you know, to bring the light is to dispel the whatever's stopping the seeker from being able to, you know, find that which is seeked, and so which is, you know, knowledge or what further advancement. That differs for each seeker and the path to get there. But it's something that I think can resonate with almost anybody. That having a good teacher or a good advisor can help clear the path and give you direction. And having a bad one could do the, you know, complete opposite and take you off your path. So that's where I'm very pragmatic on. And if you're into, if the Gnostic path works for you, if the Islamic path works for you, if the Buddhist path works for you, work with it then. Work with the path that works with you. If that self-help book is your path for you, work with it then. That's your tool. If it's going for a surf, if it's having a run, or if it's patting a dog, you know, if it's connecting you and making you feel more connected to others, then it's a good thing. It's a pretty, I use it as my litmus test, you know, like on anything, any religion, any philosophy. Is it good for people? And if it ticks that box, I'm all for it. I'm like, oh, great. If it's good for people when it's done this way, awesome. You know, anyone can take something and do it the wrong way. It's whether it's religion, social, technology, education, it happens everywhere.
To be honest, they're all talking about the same thing. You know, for the past 5 years, I've written books, you know, about the kingdom of heaven, you know, for the Christianity's point. I wrote a book on Rumi. I wrote a book on Jainism.
Oh, cool.
Patanjali.
Not many people know much about Rumi. I've done a lot. I practiced a lot of Sufi practices for many years. Like I'm one of these guys that you tell me about a cool practice and it's like Bala practice, wherever, like, you know, I will literally will do it and I'll see, okay, let's see if this mantra meditation works. Let's have, you know, that's my litmus test. That's why I like yoga. Yoga's like approach where it's, hey, we tried this. This is what we noticed. Yeah. You should try the same thing. See what happens. It's not a you'll believe in this thing and this might happen to you moment. It's like here's the practical approach. These are the steps that we used over many centuries and thousands of years to develop the skill sets to do this. And so you go,
all of them are talking about, you know, for me, there's a practical lab that exists inside, a practical experiment with you, and call it whatever you want to call it. You know, it's unified, and the goal is for a human being to unite, you know, in whatever way. You know, those teachers all provided tools for you to unite to the other side. They all provided tools, not to wait until you die to have that experience, but to have that experience while you're alive. That's what it's all about, right?
That's it, exactly.
You know, bring heaven. You know, the Aborigines, you know, the Kabbalistics, you know, feet on the ground and head in heaven. Well, that's an actual experience. It's not it's not a theory. It's a practical experience. You know, we were born and wired for that. So anyway, for the past 5 years, that I've written, you know, just audio books, and I put them on Facebook every day. I put like a different chapter on what I work on. To be honest, most people aren't interested, and yet, you know, that's fine with me, because I'm sure you know about writing. You know, there's a sacred well inside that has infinite wisdom from within, and the more you write, the deeper the well goes.
Yeah, I know exactly. I've always been a stream of consciousness writer, so same with me. I just be writing. There's more and there's more and there's more. It's actually something I plan to do again. Something other than business documents again in the future. It's to start to write again and to get back into the to poetry, and because it's all an expression. You know, like that's what I always say to people. I'm like, whatever the expression of that. I love dancing. I love singing. I love laughing, and you know, I love their full experience, a gamut of emotions and stuff. And I appreciate them now. Whereas before, I fought against anger and I fought against sadness and I fought against depressive or anxious thoughts and fought against, it was this battle kind of thing. And then you get to this moment where you realize, hang on a sec, I can work with all these tools. I love anger. Anger is awesome. Anger is what drives me to make the challenges to the world that is. And we call that, there's only two types of angers, you know, like we look at it as one type of anger which debases and one that uplifts. And so when someone stands up and goes, you know what, this situation sucks, and then starts a revolt and changes, you know, what goes on in the history of the Spanish Empire or something or other. You know, those moments and that's
constructive,
where you go,
right?
That's it, exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, we're at a 2-hour mark. How about, you know, you and I can tell already, we're going to have countless discussions. And I think 2 hours is, well, you know, you and I, we could probably talk for another 3-4 hours.
I reckon we could, Richard, for sure.
You notice on YouTube, you know, I put these on, I have a thing called Talk Stories. Talk Stories is a Hawaiian slang for a conversation, you know, friendships, you know, aloha spirit and all that.
Perfect.
So yeah, let's definitely continue this. Maybe like in another month, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
100%. Definitely sounds good.
But this has been one of the most best and rewarding conversations that I had in a while. I love to see, you know, what you're doing, and I see why my brother cherished you so much, and he told me, you know, many times, hey, hi, this friend named Kenny. You and him are on the same wavelength. Yeah, to get to know him.
We definitely are. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Richard, and I know we'll have plenty more great conversations and introduce some of these subjects. And you know, like I look forward to being able to show you the choice presentation we're putting together and being able to talk a bit about that maybe with our one of the guys that's our executive producer for the IMAX aspect of it is an amazing guy called Yuri. Yuri did the Amazon IMAX series, which was really successful. He lives on the Amazon River, in like an earth house, and they built he's a world explorer. Like, he has explored around the planet. They built a Phoenician ship and sailed it from, I think, somewhere south of Spain to Latin America, pretty much to prove that, you know, before the conquistadors got there.
For the currents and stuff, right? Oh my God.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. They sailed it like a replica 16th BC Phoenician ship, man. They sailed across from the Mediterranean all the way to. Yeah, so cool. So he's on our team. He's a great guy, really interesting. And Ricardo, my producer and co-founder, another brother as well. And you know, and for us, it's all about like, everything I do. If it's not got an impact that's going to be positive for the planet, I'm not involved in it.
I would love to talk to them too. Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can get us all on, and we can talk about the Choice Project and what we're doing. We'll have obviously by then a lot more momentum and a lot more to tell you about, and yeah, we can tag it on.
Also, can you send me some recordings? Remember, I asked for the didgeridoo.
Yeah, no problems. How long do you want? What kind of
just for about 3 minutes each.
Okay, cool. No problems. Sweet. They just asked me.
I put those on my background. Usually my brother John does all my background music, and but for the Aborigines, I wanted I just got the hit, you know, and John totally understands. Yeah, use authentic Aborigine music for the backgrounds. So.
Yeah, for sure. And we can, and if you even want to give, like, if you're looking for a theme or title or some kind of like element, because every one of the different didgeridoo, noises, sounds, usually like the kangaroo's got a sound, and the wombat's got a sound, and the koala has a sound, and so there's all these different.
Silence?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I can hit them up with that. for sure.
Yeah, and
They'd have like,
basically
it'd
because
be like a silent forest or something. It'd be
yeah,
like something like that. Yeah, cool.
yeah,
All right, no problem.
because what I heard about the Aborigines, and I'm sure it's true, that they can hear the sound of grass growing.
Yeah, I can hear it. Yep.
And
It took
and and, and
ages for me to hit onto that. That was funny. How I did that, there's a practice that I did for 2.5 years where you're you position yourself inside, or what you do is you connect energetically onto every sentient, like, animal and plant. Okay, so you start with plants, and once you get to a certain thing, it just clicks one day, and then all of a sudden I can hear the forest. Like, I mean, sound, like, not wind going through a forest. I mean, I can hear the forest, so it's alive. I can hear the sound of the worms in the ground. Literally, I know it sounds crazy. I can hear worms. I can tell you if there's a lot of worms.
oh, I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, because my wife and I are doing that every day. We go out
Mhm.
in the car ride to nature. We just roll down the window and we just enter into the silence, and the silence starts talking to you. So
Mhm.
I would love to meet people like you and the Aborigines, because the way I look at it, you are the company that you keep. That's you tell
Yeah.
me the company that you associate with, and I can guarantee you that is who you are. And so
Mhm.
I want to surround myself, with people like you and the Aborigines, and have friendships with them, literally human friendships.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Oh, you would love.
I live here in America, you live in Australia, but yet that friendship still exists.
Oh, Richard, guess what? I'm coming to the US in probably 5 or 6 weeks. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Kansas City.
You're in Kansas. I might be. I might have to go to Kansas. Actually, I think there's a project there that I may have to go look at. But I'll let you know. I'll be all over the US for about 3 or 4 weeks, looking at a bunch of different projects and seeing some of my business partners I haven't seen for over a year, so in person. So I've got like a facility that I was meant to be consulting on for the build out. That had a 12-month build out on it. That's now been built, and now they're growing my genetics. So I got to go check it out. So it's so long since I've been able to get to the US. I'm like, it's all been satellite management. But yeah, I'll be over there. I'll be in Oklahoma, Virginia, Washington, Texas, probably, for the West Coast, and then I got to go for the East Coast, and then I got to go over to the West Coast and visit a few different states there as well to check out some projects, and of course, all my friends and different people I know. As soon as I let one of them know, they're like, "Oh man, you got to come visit me if you're in the US." So all of a sudden, I've got 30 different dinners already lined up, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm going to be there for 30 nights at all. So, but we should do an interview when I'm over there from around in your area. Do
Oh
one in
yeah,
person.
that's a great idea. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go have some lunch.
Yeah. Well, hey, yeah, this has been a wonderful time. Wow.
Excellent, Richard. Yeah, absolute pleasure. And my family. So of course, I've just got access to my computer now finally because the family's left and my office is shut today. So I'm at home, and next time, if we do another one on the phone again, I'll make sure I'm in the office with the video conferencing. You wouldn't have heard 2 words from me if I hadn't stood outside most of the call, which is fine.
All right. Well, give my love to your family. I love those pictures. For me,
Thanks, brother.
I love seeing pictures of families. Kind of just.
Me too, man. Me too. So funny. You don't really understand. You're mid-20s. Growing up before I had kids, and didn't really click with me. Like any of that type of stuff. I was like, I don't really get it. And then the kids. Like I love kids. Kids always, kids always all around me. But at the same time, I was just like, like you don't really understand it. And then when you have a kid, and then and nieces and nephews and stuff like that, it changes that whole paradigm shift. Now I'm like, I love getting photos from all of them. Like, send me some photos, send me photos. Like, like, why are you sending me these photos? Like, it's like nice seeing you like in a nice spot. I see you at the beach again with your kids. You send me one every week. Now I'm like, yeah, send more photos of the family. Like I have friends that do. One of my friends, a really good videographer, and his family's right into rock climbing. So every 2 weeks he sends me a video of the family, and I really love his kids. They're great. We lived together, his family and mine, for a month or so while we were working on a project. So we're all really tight, and I love getting stuff from them and vice versa. So I was like, oh yes, it's as good as getting stuff from my wife when I'm away. And pictures of the kids. I'm like, oh yeah, send me more pictures. Send me more. I can never get enough. So awesome. Well, you have a lovely night, Richard. Enjoy
Okay,
Saturday
yeah,
night.
you too. Yeah, yeah.
And,
All right, Kenny.
we'll catch up real soon.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks. Have a great night. All right, it's a great
Thanks a
day
lot.
for you, a great night for me.
Yeah, yeah. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful day here, so I'm gonna get out in the garden, mow some lawns.
Okay, have a great day.
Have a good one, Richard. See you,
Okay, you
brother.
too. Bye.